In the original ending to Mark's Gospel, the women went to the tomb to anoint the body of Jesus, and a young man dressed in white told them that Jesus is risen and instructed them to go and tell his disciples. The women fled and said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. If that had been a movie ending, it would have been quite disappointing. Jesus came to show us the extent of God's love for us. In the supreme act of resistance and sabotage, Jesus was arrested, beaten, crucified, and buried in a tomb. I can almost see the religious leaders dusting off their hands and saying, that problem is behind us. It has been solved. We can get back to business as usual. They thought that was the end of that. They could not have been more wrong. There was much more than meets the eye. We know the rest of the story. We know about the resurrection appearances of Jesus in the garden, in the upper room, on the way to Emmaus by the Sea of Galilee. We know that even though it appeared that evil had prevailed, that was an illusion, for it was God in Jesus who had defeated evil and death. Jesus has won the victory. Yet sometimes in this life, it is hard to see the victory. When we have witnessed evil or tragedy, a child is mistreated, people are trafficked, some go hungry, accidents or violence claim lives, it may feel to us as though evil has won. We typically only hear the terrible parts of the story and rarely hear how someone in a bad situation was shown an act of kindness that was a glimmer of light in the darkness. Even when no one dared to show kindness, Jesus is with those who suffer. Jesus understands our suffering as no one else can. It's as Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, only a suffering God can help. Because Jesus suffered, we can trust him with our own suffering and the hard things in life. To me, the time that seems the most bleak is at the time of death, for at that point there is no earthly fix. Yet at every funeral, we boldly claim that death is not the end. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and I am life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Because I live, you shall live also. When we attend a funeral, we see death and it seems like the world is falling apart and dissolving into meaninglessness. It seems that death has won. But that is not all there is. The person who died has moved through the troubled waters of life into the promised land. They travel the same road Jesus did, from death to resurrection. There is life after death, a resurrection life spent in the presence of the Lord. At a funeral, it feels like death has won, but we know that the tomb of Christ is empty. Death is the great boundary of life, and in the resurrection of Jesus, God is the great boundary of death. Death limits life, but resurrection limits death. In our grief and our blindness, we thought that death was the end, but God says, surprise, it's just the beginning. Just when we thought our loved one's time had run out, God gave them eternity. What we thought was the end of Jesus' story was just the end of a chapter. What we think is the end for our loved ones is really the beginning of eternity. What we think is the evil in the world is opportunity for love to break in. It's all about resurrection, new life, new beginnings, new hope. Instead of seeing the world around us as dark and evil and hopeless, may we see something more. Just when we think our life story is without hope or just plain over, may we see as God sees, not just the big picture, but the eternal view in which love and goodness reign. May we all learn to see with resurrection eyes.